Hi everyone, welcome to the Odinic School of Mysteries. My name is Bear. I'm back. I've come back from camping. Took my son up to the mountains of Eastern Oregon, where I grew up. Showed him the little 200-person town that I spent my formative years in, and camped in a national forest. Did it the old-fashioned way. We drove down a Forest Service road until we found a spot we liked, and we pulled off and started a fire and set up camp, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I was really glad to have done it. It's a long time to spend with a toddler. Well, he's not a toddler anymore, I guess. He's going to be 3 on the 1st, August 1st. So I don't know if that makes him a toddler still or not. I'm not sure. So yeah, I'm back. One of the things when you're up there in the woods, and I'm really big into watching the stars. I think a lot of people get too caught up with the sun, what the sun does for us, and the stars are kind of forgotten. And so I spent a lot of hours while we're camping looking at the stars, and it's pretty spectacular up there. There's more stars really than there is darkness, and unless you've had the opportunity to be up there where there's like zero light pollution, and by zero I mean it's like no light pollution. There's really nothing like it quite in the world. I grew up under those stars. But I was thinking about when you look at stars like that, it's hard not to ask questions. And one of the things that I spent a lot of time thinking about was I noticed that, so my son is going to be 3. It's going to be 3 in like 2 days. And one of the things I noticed is that the way I am to the gods is probably really similar to the way my son is to me. My son is to me as I am to the gods. And what do I mean by that? Is that my son is old enough to be curious and to notice that there's certain patterns to things, there's certain things that he's seeing, and that they're clearly connected to something. But his consciousness isn't at a level, and he hasn't had enough life experience to be able to make those logic jumps. So there's a lot of questions like, son, if you do that, you're gonna break it. Well, why? Oh, because you're hitting your car with a hammer. Well, why is that gonna break it? And you have to try and explain how one thing connects to the other. And I kind of realized that I've learned more about the gods by watching my relationship with my children than I ever have through any other means. Because I sit outside and I'll be looking up at the stars or just on my back porch watching traffic go by. And I'll hopefully this isn't going to break on me. Or watching traffic go by, and I'll be asking the gods the same questions, like why. Okay, I'm seeing this pattern here, but why is it connected to this? How is good and evil the same thing as light and darkness? Are they actually connected, or are they just symbolically connected, or what? I know that I could tell that mathematics and geometry are similar. Like I know that they're Well, I know that those two things are connected, but I'm not sure how they connect to the gods, for example. There's an obvious connection between those two things, and I'm not sure what those are yet. Um, and so there's a lot of things like that where you see these patterns where it's like, how come, how do we have, like what is the connection between like aliens, for example, and the gods, and just these kind of questions that I know from my own experience I'm looking at and saying, okay, I could tell that there's a pattern here. I could tell that there's something here that is connected, but I'm not sure exactly how those two threads are attached to each other. And I see my son doing the same thing. Here I am, this adult with 32 years of life experience, and my son is asking similar questions, but just at a lower consciousness level. And I'm sitting here able to see all the patterns and understand the cause and effects and understand all these things that we take for granted but aren't obvious to someone who's 3. We take for granted that it's obvious, right? We think that it's obvious that if I hit my toy with a hammer, it'll break. But that's because I have the, what's the word? Experience is probably a good enough word for it. I have the experience that have witnessed countless times the destructive capabilities of hammers, and I know that my son hitting his, I could tell that, toy and hammer aren't necessarily good combinations together, but he hasn't had that yet. He doesn't have all that experience, the ability to see those patterns yet. And I could just, I could just see that is the way it is between us and the gods. There's a quote from Groundhog Day that has always stuck with me. I can't exactly remember the context of it, but it said that maybe the reason God isn't actually omniscient, he's just been there the longest. Like if you remember the plot of Groundhog Day, he wakes up every day is the same day. He'll go to bed or something will happen, and he'll just wake up replaying the same day over and over and over again, and to the point where the movie never comes out and says how long he's been there in that same day, but like some internet nerds have figured it out that it's like something like 50 to 60 years or something like that. I don't remember how they came to that conclusion, but the working theory is something like that. A long time. And so by the time he actually gets free, he's done everything. He knows everything there is to know about everybody. He's taught himself to play the piano, and to everyone else, he's just suddenly awesome. But to him, he's been stuck in the same thing forever. And my thinking is, the easiest explanation I have for the gods is that is basically that they're from a cycle above us. They're basically us, just a few cycles ahead. And they've been there longer than we have. It's like I've been here longer than my son. My son's brain is not the same as my brain. His ability to reason, his ability to get control of his own feelings, the elaborate spider web of nerve connections and things that have taken place in my brain, because I've spent 32 years wiring it, isn't present in his brain. Even though when you're born you have more brain connections than you ever will any time in your life, it's not even really the amount of connections you have that matters, I don't think. It's the way that you have wired it. Like the stuff you do and the stuff you're passionate about in high school are the things that stick with you for life. Which is why it's like fantastic to learn an instrument when you're young, because you won't ever forget it. If you do that as an adult, you forget things because you're operating with less equipment at your disposal. In my experience, I think anyone could learn to do anything. I don't really buy the idea that your brain just stops working as you get older. I think, like with any instrument, with any skill or muscle tissue or anything, you don't use it, it's going to die. It's going to atrophy. And like paraplegics learning to walk and all kinds of things, time and attention and constant work will give you a really strong muscle, even all the way up into your old age. And so, but yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to think, because it kind of gives you at least it does for me. It gives me a lens to kind of compare things against. Yeah.
David's calling. Could you call him?
After I'm done recording my video. Anyway. That was my wife, by the way. Congratulations. You saw my wife. Where was I? Anyway, it gives you something to kind of compare against. Where you... that if you could kind of put yourself back in little kid shoes, and the way you see the universe, and the way that everything is wondrous and cool and new, and every question has a good answer, that the patterns aren't obvious, and so when you discover the patterns, it's really exciting. And you have your parent who's been here for a long time, and you can see all those patterns, and you really look up to them, and they help you find your way. And that's really the way the gods seem to me. And in a weird, like I said, in a weird way, my son has done more to teach me about that than any of the books I've read. Right? Any of the stories of the Norse gods, or the Greek gods, or the Roman gods, or Quetzalcoatl, or Thoth, or any of those. It sounds really weird saying it, but in a weird way, my son has been the most valuable wisdom teacher I've ever had. It's pretty cool when your kids teach you like that, and help you kind of find your way. So I really look forward to when he gets older. It's funny, he was at preschool, and oh no, he wasn't at preschool. My wife took him to church. She has a friend who runs a church on the other side of town, and she took my son with her to church, and the pastor asked, "What is another name for the son?" They're talking about Jesus, and they're talking about something. I don't remember the full context, but so the pastor asks, "So what's another name for the Son of God?" And my son raises his hands and says, "Balder is." Baldur's the Norse sun god. And the teacher was, the pastor was very gracious, and she was like, "Oh." It was really fun. But yeah, it was a good trip. It was a good trip. I had a lot of fun, and I miss those stars. I miss looking at those stars. They're undeniable. We live in an incontestable creation. It is just unbelievably beautiful. And I often think that, if this is the underworld and it is as beautiful as it is here, I can't imagine what it is once we get out of this place. I had a really great time. Well, I think that's about all it is for today. Quick reminder, we are approaching the first week of August, and the first week of every month is Q&A. So if you have any questions that's burning in your heart, please feel free to ask them. If there's some point that you think I misrepresented, feel free to put that in there in the comments. If you're commenting and you want it to be addressed at the Q&A, please indicate that you would like it to be on the Q&A. If not, don't worry about it. And I'll talk to you all soon. All right? Bye-bye.